לבנון, וירקידם כמו אייל, לבנון וסיריון כמו בן רימים, כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יחל מדבר, יחל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יחולל איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ויחלו כולו מרכבות, אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז ימו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. 123 ובנוכו יאמר שוב אדוני רבבות אלפי ישראל קום אדוני למנוחתך אתה וירון עוזך כהנך ילבשו צדק וחסידיך ירננו בעבור דוד עבדך תשב מבני משיחך כך טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזובו את חיילי ומחזיקים בה וטוב לכם מאושר תרחם דרכנו מכונתי בותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש חדש ימינו חדש ימינו
You may be seated as we continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 123.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shamer Rabba Milmad v'nachiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beis Yisrael magala uvizman karif ve'yimaru amen yesh meraba mevarach le'olam u'lalmei amaya yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yinbar ve'yitromam ve'yitnasei ve'yitadar ve'yitaleh ve'yitala shmei likud shabrichu leila leila min go birchata ve'shirata tush bechata Ve'imru Amen.
Amen. Okay. So hopefully everyone has or has nearby a box of raisins, correct? Okay. I want to invite you now to open the box and to take out just one raisin and put it, I know, it's hard, and put it in the palm of your hand. I'll give you a minute. Take your raisin and hold it between your finger and thumb, and we are going to slowly and mindfully experience this raisin. Okay? Take time to really focus on the raisin. Gaze at the raisin with care and full attention, like you've never seen this creation before. Imagine this is your first time encountering this delectable wonder of nature. Let your eyes explore every part of the raisin, examining the highlights, where the light shines, especially if you're sitting in one of these seats where the rainbow of our stained glass is on your head. See the darker hollows, the folds and the ridges, and any asymmetries or unique features of this magnificent piece of food. Turn the raisin over between your fingers, exploring its texture. If you're comfortable now, you might even want to try this with your eyes closed to see if this enhances your sense of touch. Now hold the raisin beneath your nose. If you're wearing a mask, then you can pretend. With each inhalation, take in any smell or aroma or fragrance that may arise from the raisin. Maybe your mouth is starting to water. Maybe your tummy is beginning to grumble, or already was. And now slowly bring the raisin to your lips, noticing how your hand and arm just know exactly where to go to position itself, whether your eyes are open or closed. And now finally, let's say the blessing together before gently placing the raisin on your tongue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz. You could put it in your mouth without chewing. Spend a few moments focused on the simple sensation of having the raisin in your mouth. Feel the grooves that you saw with your eyes and notice the taste that was hinted at by the smell. And when you're ready, you can prepare to chew the raisin. You can move it to the side of your mouth, and then very consciously take a few bites of the raisin and experience the waves of taste that emanate as you continue chewing, and how the taste and sensation might even change with each bite. When you feel ready, you could swallow the raisin. And see if you can first detect that intention to swallow as it comes up, and experience very consciously as the raisin makes its way down into your body and travels throughout your system. Okay. For those of you who have eaten raisins previously, which I assume is maybe all of you, how was this exercise different? What did you notice? Click, raise your hand. What did you notice? Amy.
It was so much better than a typical raisin.
It tasted better. Usually we can just like gobble up this entire tiny box because we're starving and it's like, 12 o'clock and we've been sitting in services for 3 hours. But it tastes so much better when you're that much more focused on it. Beautiful. Josh.
Details of the raisin like I never noticed them.
Absolutely. How often do you pay that much attention to a tiny little raisin? Ivy.
I noticed the anticipation of eating the raisin. It's like I can't wait.
Yeah, it makes it that much more exciting when you finally have the opportunity to eat it. Alana.
The wrinkly, when they say like it wrinkled,
Yeah.
I could feel like those ridges.
Like in your mouth then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you usually are not as quite as attentive to that, right? Yeah, Amy. Yes, I know. You're holding this box and it's like, oh my gosh, I just want to eat the raisin, but here I'm giving you these instructions not to. Michael. It's true. Well, so now you have a box, and so now you can finish them if you'd like. Sarah, was your hand up too?
I was going to say, it made me think about this gorgeous plum red raisin
Oh,
process in that it shriveled and became this dried raisin.
beautiful. So the raisin didn't just fall out of the sky as a raisin and into our hands, but there was a process for growing that grape, for nurturing that vine, for picking that grape, for drying it in the sun, like those little raisin men I'm like thinking about, drying it in the sun to have its way, then boxed and made its way all the way here. A whole process to get from that grape or that vine and turn into a raisin. Yeah, Aaron.
I'm thinking, can we do this on Yom Kippur?
Okay, that's why we're doing this today. And, well, Jeff, you could have the last word. Oh, we could have one more. Oh, yeah? So then, what do you think that's about? You already know. So once you have that awareness, we can kind of carry that awareness forth into future raisin eating experiences, even beyond this day. Linda.
That's something so insignificant can give us so much pleasure.
Okay. Beautiful. So something so small, so insignificant, can give us so much pleasure when we bring our mindfulness to it. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that too often, when we grab a snack or sit down to a meal, we might not have anywhere near this same level of intention that we just experienced with our tiny little raisin. And though we might not give every act of eating this much attention and intention, our tradition teaches that we should offer blessings both before and after we eat, every time we eat. That we should pause before taking the first bite at the start of a meal, and again before we run off to our next appointment or next adventure at the end of a meal. But from where is this instruction to pause derived? How and why did it become filled with the blessings that we now have to bookend our meals? And why on earth are we talking about this today? Answer one, because we can't do it on Yom Kippur. In the book of Deuteronomy, we read, V'ahalta v'savata uvarachta et Adonai Elohecha al ha'aretz hatova asher natan lach. When you have eaten, v'ahalta, and you are satisfied, v'savata, you should bless. Uvarachta, Adonai our God, for the good land that God has given to you. These three words, v'ahalta, v'savata, uvarachta, are not only read here in Torah, but they're also recited as a part of Birkat HaMazon, the blessing after the meals. And it is these three words that BTBJ has chosen as the Torah basis for our theme for this upcoming year, food. I know. As we look closely at these three words, we have to first ask ourselves a few questions. And we'll look at each of these pieces. First, v'ahalta. When talking about food, we need to begin by asking simply, what is food? V'savata. What does it mean to be satisfied? And uvarachta. What are the blessings that food brings us and that we might bring to the world as a result of the many, sometimes beautiful, nurturing, and satisfying, and sometimes challenging and complicated relationships that we may each have with food? V'ahalta, v'savata, uvarachta. At first glance, these instructions might seem rather simple. If this, then that. If you eat, then when you're done, it's time to bless. But this morning, I want to start the process of a much deeper dive into this verse from Deuteronomy. Much of the book of Deuteronomy is a reiteration of rules previously received in Torah. Throughout this final book, the Israelites are standing on the precipice of the Promised Land. They're in the midst of this review session, which is being conducted so that we can remember how to be when we get there. And we're reminded of our covenant with God. God will continue to have our back and protect us, but we need to also hold up our end of the bargain and keep God's laws. In Parshat Ekev, the parsha where we find this verse that we're discussing, we're reminded of how we got here. God took the Israelites out of Egypt, fed them manna in the desert, and now here we are, about to enter the land of Israel. The Promised Land is described as a good land with plentiful water and crops. The text describes this as a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing. This description of a lush, abundant land is a far cry from the meagerness of slavery or the monotony of the manna that they had to eat for 40 years in the wilderness. I don't know about you, but if your mouth was not already watering, it probably is now, just thinking about all of this lushness. So you can only imagine what the Israelites might have been thinking and feeling. This smorgasbord will be theirs once they enter the land, as long as they continue to keep God's laws. And we also learned that when the Israelites partake of this land, that they should do so in a particular way. V'achalta, v'savata, v'varachta. So let's start with the very beginning. V'achalta, when you have eaten. If we're going to talk about eating, then we need to talk about food. The first question then is, what are we eating? The verse from Deuteronomy describes some of the food that might be consumed, including some of the bounty and the specific plants and seeds that will be found in the land of Israel. But our diets today have become much more robust and varied than this list that's described in Torah. And aside from any raw vegans among us, most of us probably no longer subsist exclusively or primarily on fruits and seeds from our gardens. Not even you, Alana. Instead, our pantries also contain a fair number of packaged items from the grocery store. And our diets rely on restaurant food and possibly some fast food in order to live. Some of these items might be whole foods, rich in vitamins and minerals to strengthen our bodies and our minds, while others are likely artificially nutrient-rich, possibly claiming to provide some of the health benefits of the foods themselves, when in reality they find themselves to be a far cry from the origin of the said nutrient. When I was in high school, with some of you, I had a chemistry teacher who used to allow us to turn in extra credit assignments. Our teacher had an extensive library of VHS tapes in his classroom on a variety of chemistry-related topics. We were invited to take out a number of them throughout the year to watch the tape and then turn in a report to receive a few points of extra credit. Well, I'm sure that I must have done this at least 3 or 4 times throughout the year. There is one tape that I watched that I will never forget. Here I learned all about the production of processed foods. I watched the step-by-step process of adjusting flavoring, scent, and texture in some popular frozen delicacies in order to achieve the maximal taste sensation and the most enjoyable culinary experience. Part of why this has stuck with me is because I remember being in awe as they added and subtracted each of these flavors. There were walls lined with these little bottles of flavoring, but the actual ingredient that matched the flavor was nowhere in sight in the lab. Meaning, just because something looked like it contained tomatoes, or even if it tasted like it contained tomatoes, that did not necessarily mean that any actual tomatoes had been utilized in the production of this food item. And I found this fact rather befuddling and disturbing, as it cracked open my notion of food and what is really in the food that I was eating. If you were to pick up some of the boxes of snacks or other items from your pantry or grocery aisle, you may not be surprised to see the long list of ingredients on the back of the box. Some items will hopefully be recognizable, while others will likely sound less like food and more like something taken from that lab from my chemistry video. Author Michael Pollan opens his book In Defense of Food, An Eater's Manifesto, with this very question: what is food? If food is only calories with no nutrient benefits attached, is it food? If we consume nutrients in pill or supplement form, is that food? If ingredients have been manipulated or modified so much that the resulting product is so far